I just I sat still and I kind of did a little meditation. I did a little chanting, and I realized, okay, this is what mindfulness. This is what meditative practice of any sort, whether it's Buddhism or Tai Chi or any kind of introspective pursuit. It doesn't necessarily change the world, the external world. It changes your ability to handle it. It gives you a handle. And as we all know, control is an illusion. The only thing you can really control is your reaction to things, how you respond. And my Buddhism is, and my Tai Chiism and my mindful meditationism, all hopefully gives me a pause for thought. And that's what's one of the things that's so distracting about the past 9 months is that I am just violently torn from pillar to post. Emotionally, I don't have that balance. Because so much in life is seeking a center, a balance. It's like homeostasis, or kind of the pH balance. Everything is trending towards the middle and seeking some way to establish an accord between disparate states. You're listening to TMI for the week of October 23rd, 2017. You have to accept the fact that the other person is not separate. I mean, it's what the namaste. You know what namaste means, right?
No.
Namaste is Hindi, I think, or Sanskrit for, kind of the Godhead in me recognizes and acknowledges the Godhead in you. Basically that's it. Kind of you just saying I, kind of like the Cherokee or the Sioux used to say, I see you, right? I see you as an individual. You are not, kind of an active shooter or, kind of an active participant in something that is outside me. You are an independent agent as I am, and as such have as much right to impact the world as I do. I was listening to something about 7-8 months ago. The guy from the University of Toronto, I think he was a sociologist, did a study with another guy, a sociologist, at the University in Chicago. And they were talking about exactly why the two sides of the current political argument in the States have such a hard time, why there seems to be a greater distance between the sides than there has been since the Civil War. And I don't know whether we talked about this before, but I mean, they discussed the tenets that each side valued, right? So nationalism and self-sacrifice and as opposed to inclusiveness and freedom of thought. And so the idea is that no matter from one side, no matter how rapidly and passionately and convincing you construct an argument, it's never going to reach the other side because essentially you're speaking a different dialect. You're directing your argument at the wrong parts of their brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like the Tower of Babel. And there is, like, Trump is an agent of, let's say he's an agent of chaos, but and I think he actually is. But disruption is a word that gets used a lot in business, right? Like you disrupt an opposing brand's grip on the market by, destabilizing some aspect of their business, right?
I'm reluctant to say this, but because it justifies his strategy, but there is a negotiating style wherein you go in and burn the barn down, and then you fight about how to rebuild a new one.
Is that not the art of the? That's one of the arts of the deal, is it not? And that's what I think about. I think that's what I'm talking about about disruption.
Yeah.
It's guerrilla warfare, guerrilla marketing. You destabilize the enemy's supply lines and its ability to function in the manner in which it's come to be used to functioning, and then in the ensuing chaos and confusion, you can take over targeted grounds and properties, and that's what I guess that kind of stuff works in business, and that's what Donald Trump seems to be doing politically and socially and economically.
It would be so easy for Trump. They could hire just one person to advise them on all the little trigger things they could be doing to placate liberalized thinkers. Like, how much would it have cost for them to a week later have said, okay, fine, we'll put the money back into Meals on Wheels? We would all have been going, oh, that's the first great thing he's done, It would be so easy for them to pander to the other side. And in every way, they refuse to. I find that kind of interesting.
But I think when you look at, I get a strong sense that there is, Donald Trump is an agent of chaos, an agent of disruption in the on the global scene, but also in his own life. I don't know whether it's fake news. I don't know whether it's if it bleeds, it leads. I don't know whether they're trying to create a backstory to support further destabilization of his presidency. But everyone's talking about kind of that stuff that Bob Corker says. No one has anything concrete and positive to say about the way that he comports himself from the moment he walked into the building. What a dump, right? It's like there is no even acknowledgement of the need for gravitas and subtlety and nuance in the way that he deals with his staff or the world at large.
Well, here's an example. When they went to Puerto Rico, Melania wore high-heel shoes.
No, that was Houston, wasn't it? That was Houston that she wore high-heel shoes.
I think she
walked off the plane, I think.
Yeah, but sure enough, when they went to Puerto Rico...
Same thing?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I heard when he was throwing paper towels out at the crowd, and he had to actually be stopped from throwing cans of chicken.
Why?
At the crowd.
That I didn't hear.
Yeah, well, that might just be
no, it sounds
constructed.
I believe
it. The fact that neither one of us we don't know where the bottom is. Did you ever go to Maple Leaf Gardens or anything like that when you were a kid?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, think about the food, right? Kind of it's like hot dogs and popcorn and crap, right? Yeah. Crap. Like Harold Ballard used to turn the water pipes, the water fountains off, and wouldn't serve. Turn the refrigeration off on the pop, so that people would just get thirstier and thirstier, right? Now you get people talking about, we have deep fried cheese and quesadillas and ridiculous things that you just should not be expected to eat from basically a food vendor, right? If I'm going to eat something, as questionable or technical as I'm not going to get ceviche from a major league.
No cordon bleu chicken fingers?
No, not going to do it. I might as well. It's like buying sushi from a gas station. You're just asking for distress. I want it to be from a restaurant where I can go back and say, this stuff made me sick. But it's the same thing with Trump and his presidency, right? There is no, again, I come back to it, there's no gravitas, there's no nuance, and there is no call to it. There is no sense that it is required. It's just distracting buffoonery. It's violent colors. It's cartoonish. And as I said before, there's no sense of where the bottom is. It's like, this is what makes people drown in like 2 feet of water, right? You don't know that you can just stand up because you don't know where the bottom is. And there is nothing that you could say to me, or that I could read in the newspaper, or listen to on the radio, or hear on the television, that I would be surprised at this point.
Okay, have you been keeping track of all the Manaforts and the Kellys and the Tillersons and the...
Well, keeping track in what sense?
I have to actually start writing this down and making myself a map like you would if you were investigating a RICO scan.
Like one of those flow charts?
Yeah.
Or the scene of the crime thing. It's going to be like a big wall with pictures, saying, oh, okay, well, this,
I think it's partially because it's so silly. I'm having trouble keeping my faces and names straight in it. But it just is amazing. But anyway, I think that I got to start taking a break from it. Moving forward.
And the only reason I haven't myself is that there's a part of me, and I'm going to do it anyway because it's just self-preservation. There's a part of me that realizes that okay, it's not my country. It's not my responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like watching a car accident.
Okay, but then there's your Boeing, there's your Bombardier, there's your...
I have a hard time feeling bad about Bombardier, right? I think Bombardier is a dog's breakfast, and the fact is, we did, kind of as taxpayers, we did give Bombardier $1 billion, and you know what? And still, they can't manage to deliver their GD streetcars to us on time, right? So I think Bombardier, is it too big to fail? Probably. Does it need to fail? Probably.
It's kind of like Nortel, no?
Exactly. There was I was talking to a common friend of ours, Ann Waring, she of the Baseline, and she was saying she has a friend whose husband worked 5 or 6 years ago, worked in a position of authority, and he is well placed in Bombardier. He says, I can't wait to get out. He's now a chocolatier. He's or I guess because he's in Quebec, he's a chocolatier or something. But he says it's a family-run business that they haven't got a clue what they're doing, and they're being propped up because there is, I think if they were in any other province, they would not still be functioning. Quebec has this separate but equal sense that we need to support our own. And you know what? God love you for it. If more people, kind of took care of their own selves, we might be happier. But it is undeniably isolationist and nationalistic, or in their case, provincialistic. They support their music and their TV and their movies in a way that is commensurate with a national culture, right?
Well, if you start threatening Bombardier, you're really redoing the whole Avro move. Because this has some similarities. U.S. corporation Boeing, competing with a Canadian industry. This is the last bastion of Canadian aerospace.
I wonder if Boeing was involved in was Boeing around? Was Boeing involved in any way in the Avro incident?
I don't know if it was Pratt and Whitney or...
Anyway, it's not important, but I mean, I get your point.
This is interesting, but Boeing, How old is Boeing? We're listed on Laughable, Stitcher, YouTube, Player FM, Google Play Music, Castbox, Blueberry, Listen Notes, Spotify, TuneIn, and iTunes.
We got a coffee yesterday and drove down to Clark Beach, I guess. Cherry Beach area,
Right.
the bottom of Cherry Street.
Yeah.
I used to go down there a great deal. I used to be a member of the something called the Moordale Sailing Association, the outer or inner harbor sailing clubs. There's a half dozen of them. They have boats, and you pay the dues, and you go down there and you kind of have a beer and rent one of their, or learn how to sail one of their little boats. And,
Wow.
and it's a social sailing thing for people who can't afford their own boats. And
Yeah, there's kayaking and surfboarding.
there is kayaking and waterboarding, or well, not waterboarding. What am I thinking about?
The crab and honey treatment?
The standing up and what do they call that?
Wakeboarding? I don't know.
Paddle?
Parasailing? I don't know.
No, something.
That's not
Yeah,
parasailing.
but it's crazy. It's like gondoliering, being a gondolier on a surfboard, right? It's crazy.
Paddleboarding.
Something like that.
Right.
Yeah, stand. Well, I don't know.
Alpha male stuff.
They have those down there as well. But I used to go. I used to go down there a great deal because there's a really the bike path goes down there and then past all that up through Leslie Spit and back up
Totally.
to Leslie and Lakeshore. So it's a nice little stroll through a part of the city that has nothing to do with the rest of the city. It's like the Toronto Island.
It's Unwin Avenue. There's a beach there.
Exactly.
Lots of sand. There's the piers. It's,
Exactly, yeah.
I'm embarrassed to say how much time I've spent down there.
Well, there's and also I used to walk down there because there used to be a Mr. J's chip truck down there, and I could convince myself if I walked for 45 minutes down to Cherry Beach, I could. I was entirely deserving of a large order of Yukon Gold French fries, and and a couple cigarettes, and then I'd walk back home. So very nice. Yeah, ever since the what was it, the Pucka Orchestra? Remember, there's a band in the '80s from Toronto called the Pucka Orchestra, and they had a couple songs. Might as well be on Mars, and that's why I'm riding on the Cherry Beach Express. You remember that song?
No.
Oh, well, it's a cool song. The Cherry Beach Express was a term for what cops used to do.
Right. With them, beat you with the phone book.
Oh no, they would take you down to Cherry Beach, where there's no one but the odd questing gay man looking for a place that homosexuals used to go and park in the dark parking lot and have trysts. So the cops would take you down there and kick the stuffing out of you. And it happened often enough that they had a term for it. Oh, he's on the Cherry Beach Express.
Yeah, I've heard
and he
that.
come back bruised and contused, and I think there was a case 20 odd years ago where some guy finally put a stop to it. I think it was probably around the time that this song came out, because this guy said, I got stopped. They took me out for a ride on the Cherry Beach Express, and they say, prove it. And they went and he had them open up the lockers of these two cops in question, and there was like blood and hair and kind of on their boots and stuff. So that part of the city was always very quiet and very peaceful, just kind of sailing people and paddlers and dogs and guys eating chips and stuff. And you could wander over to the water and look just across, like a couple hundred feet across to the Toronto Islands, right? It was very idyllic. And I haven't been down there in 5 or 6 years, if not longer, probably since before I certainly haven't been down there since they started bringing jets into the Toronto Island.
Right.
And the impact, we were sitting there for like 20 minutes, and must have been a dozen planes came flying in over. I can't imagine what it would be like for the people who live on Toronto Island, or the harborfront condo owners and stuff. What a paradigm shift for those people.
Right.
I almost feel bad for them.
Well, there used to be a dock down there where they would re-weld these Great Lakes shipping tanker ships. And we'd take our motorcycles down to the pier and do wheelies right on the edge of the pier, right next to the water. Or you could ride your bike out to the tip of the Leslie Spit. Or
yeah,
I even flew my drone down there. But there's no doing that with an airport, right?
Well, you don't. I thought you, according to Marvin Gary's comment, I thought you sold your drone.
I did. I did. But I
only
have
had
some
one?
Spectacular pictures of.
Oh, I believe it. When Nancy and I were traveling, sometime earlier this summer with two guys from cousins or second cousins or something from Holland, and he had 2 drones, and he was a huge hit wherever we went, because I'd never really seen one up close.
Yeah. And
the ability for them to just maintain freeze in space, you know, kind of that's just it's of course it makes me automatically think about Skynet and Terminator. I mean, it's hard not to. It's the first place I ever saw that design was, kind of in the Terminator movie, and that's astonishing to me.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. The problem sort of is that, like, technically you can't fly it anywhere. You can't fly it 250 feet away from, inhabited buildings, which includes, so unless you actually have land in Tobermory, technically you can't fly it anywhere, anywhere in the city, near populated areas, its time in a way sort of came and went already.
Yeah.
Like I was driving up Pape last year, and I pulled over to a corner store, and I get back in my car, and there's a guy standing there in that pose, holding the controller and looking up at, you can kind of hear it buzzing. Well, this is at on Pape and Bloor. That is so profoundly illegal. It's inconceivable.
Now, why would it be illegal at Pape and Bloor?
It's near populated houses. There's rules, like you have to be able to control it and control the public. Like you're responsible for the people observing it even.
But that's ludicrous.
Well, not really. Okay, so flash to this. So I'm in the Don Mills Ravine. Yeah. Near where they train the dogs in the ravine. I've gone way out of my way to go into the most remote area possible to fly the stupid thing. And I'm doing it in like February on a warm day. So these paths are as empty as they'll ever be. So I'm doing my thing, and I land it, and quickly out of nowhere comes what I think is actually a cop walking police dogs. And you know what dogs will do? They want to go smell it. Mm-hmm. And what you don't realize is that the blades, just stationary, are razor sharp. Traveling above the speed of sound times 4. Profound cuts. I've seen people who capture them in flight rather than actually land them. Mm-hmm. And all it has to do is just make a little twitch. And there's pictures online of what looks like somebody has tried to slash their wrist. It's to the bone. It's so profoundly sharp and dangerous that it's just incredible. And the idea of a dog walking up to it with its pink nose is just incredible, the damage that it would do to an animal. And so if you ever laugh, it crashed into a goose, the injuries to any animal that comes into contact with these things are just unbelievable.
Now, let me ask you a question, because I have seen pictures, and I don't know whether it's possible or not, but you see rotors with
the guards.
Now, does
Those
that-
guards are made of like plastic,
Yeah.
so on impact they just shatter.
But
But there's the up and down. So if, let's say, you stick your finger up, like it's only guiding, it's only protecting the rotor in the XY component, in the X-axis. There's no Y protection there. So, and you know, drones don't just move horizontally, they fall or rise.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. Like the guards...
So would you be able, I guess this is the question, would you be able to encase them in something like a mesh, and would they still function?
You create weird turbulences and stuff. I think there's ones that have them enclosed in a kind of more complete guide, but it changes how the air, it changes the aerodynamics and flight dynamics and efficiency of the motor and...
Okay, but you look at movies from the 40s and 50s, and like I was watching 12 Angry Men a month or two ago, and these guys are sweaty and stressed, and they're in this deliberating room, and there's just like two little fans right up in the corner, and the attempt to there's no attempts to really create you look at fans now, and you couldn't get your finger in there if you wanted to. And that's just, I think, a function of the litigious nature of the world. I mean, I heard the other day, I don't remember where, but a family that's suing a rail line because their son got drunk and passed out on some tracks and was killed.
Yeah.
I mean, in a world where you can sue a train for running over a drunk person.
I don't think they're going to win that case.
But I mean, you would have said the same thing about that company that person who sued McDonald's for making their coffee too hot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of, guess what? Holding you know, kind of fresh hot coffee in your crotch while you drive, not a good idea.
Free-range children in the 70s versus what we have now.
Well, there have been several instances. I've heard of two in the New York area, and one just recently, I think, in Vancouver, about social services taking parents to court because they're letting their kids take the public transit to school, right, at an age that is deemed to be inappropriate. Now,
I used to fly to PEI at age, I think it was 5 or 7 or something.
3 or 4 times a year, I would fly back from school, and kind of it's so, and I take buses and Greyhound buses and stuff like that. Absolutely. So, yeah, the question is infantilization. I think that's the end result, but it's all of a piece with the if it bleeds it leads, and the media focusing on alarming events and the rise of autism, because not only have they broadened the diagnostic requirements, but they also have made it a cause célèbre, and therefore it gets reported more, like child abuse and sexual crimes, predators and things like that. I mean, is there more of them now, or is it just reported more? And conversely, or as a compliment,
well, it's kind of like dogs in hot cars.
Yeah.
I
mean, I'm sure people have always left dogs and kids in cars.
I was left in hot cars.
Yeah.
It's what you did if you were going to the post office.
I had the strongest memory of being left in. We had a Rambler, I think, and I was left in the parking lot of the Fredericton Mall. I was like 9 or 10, and for some strange reason, I conceived of the strongest belief that the brakes had failed on the car. I got out and I was leaning against the trunk, and I think the car kind of rolled a little bit because the brakes are kind of they don't keep you immediately and exclusively in one spot.
Mm-hmm.
So I was convinced that I was the only thing keeping the car from rolling into traffic. So I spent 25 minutes wedging myself, between the asphalt and the back of this car, thinking that I was saving my family from having to walk everywhere. Completely delusional on my part, I would like to point out. But yeah, that's what happens when you leave, kind of 9-year-old Kevin in a car by himself. I didn't expire. I had the brains to open the window. And that's the issue, okay? And toddlers and dogs, they don't. So, I mean, I think it's a good thing, but I think you overly report. Some things need to be reported. Some things, Brandeis, Louis Brandeis. Is that a name you know?
No.
Supreme Court Justice. He's the one that's supposed to have said that sunshine is the best disinfectant.
Okay.
And some things need to have lights shone on them. Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, all of that stuff certainly needs to have a light shone on it, right? I don't think you need to be quite so concerned with kids riding transit on their own when they're 11, right? And actually threatening the parents with actually the removal of said child if they're not tenanted or taken to school themselves. That's crazy. I think what happens when you allow a kid some independence, the first and foremost thing that happens is they become independent. They become able to act independently, and if you depend on someone to act responsibly, they generally will learn to be responsible.
How else you get a streetwise kid?
Yeah. And someone who can take a weird hop, like in something that happens outside the realm of normalcy. You need to be able to respond.
Yeah, you stomp on the guy's foot and you run.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you don't have that kind of experience, if you think, oh, what do you mean I don't get a trophy as well? All my t-ball coaches said everybody was a winner, right? No, not everyone's not a winner. That's not the way life works. What's your read on this Boyle dude, the guy that just came back from?
Well, apparently the Americans were claiming he was afraid to get on the plane and afraid of prosecution, and I'm hearing from other people that was a fabrication.
Well, I heard he was. I heard the same thing. He didn't want to get on. He didn't want to go to Bagram. Didn't want to get on an American plane, and he was quite hostile to the U.S. State Department representative that accompanied them back on the Air Canada flight or whatever flight it was that they took to London and then back. Who takes their pregnant wife to go hiking in Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Who does that?
And then did he remarry or something? I thought there was more to that marriage controversy.
No, he was married to Omar Khadr's
sister. Yeah.
Now I don't know what happened to that marriage, but he remarried an American woman, and I'm assuming they're both. I don't know whether they're both Muslims. He made some reference to kind of teaching his children that kind of Islam was not ably represented by the thugs and murderers that had captured them. But so I mean, I'm assuming he's a Muslim. Whether that's he was a Muslim before he was captured, I don't know. But there's just something hinky about this guy's whole story.
Huh.
Kind of got my, as you say earlier, my reptilian hindbrain is kind of tingling.
But it is getting airplay because just any connection to the Qadr and the $10 million settlement and the controversy.
Oh, well, I think it's a pretty extraordinary story if it was just an extraordinary story. But I mean, yeah, just what are you doing with a pregnant woman in, like, who goes hitchhiking with a pregnant woman maybe in Alberta, right? Maybe, kind of in BC, right? But I mean, who the frig travels to Taliban territory in rural Afghanistan to go hiking? It's just weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's you were.
But people are weird, so
yeah.
I mean, people do quite often take these trips, and they go right into the hot spots. I don't think they're oblivious to it. I think they're attracted by it's a type of tourism.
You remember the chaos of the G20 down here in downtown Toronto?
Yeah.
Burning cop cars, which I incidentally believe the cops ignited on their own as bait to the anarchists and the people that wanted to hop around and get some awesome apocalyptic Instagram photos. But still, you see people running around and burning cop car down at Bay and King. And, there's people running around, the occasional person, kind of with their hoodie and throwing things and breaking things and doing all this kind of stuff. And every once in a while you see someone, just some, knob that got off the subway at King Station and walked over because he wanted to take pictures, right? Wanted to be there, right? And so you're right. There are people who are clueless and think they are, because they were raised as snowflakes and given T-ball trophies and kept safe from every eventuality that their instincts that this is a situation that I should not involve myself in. They're not there. Right? They think that they're a string that goes off into infinity. They're all very, very surprised when Lachesis cuts their thread.
What is it, Weinstein or Stein?
Well, I think remember last time we spoke, you asked me about Hillary Clinton, and I talked about the warping impact of being close to those kind of centers of power, whether they're political or economical or anything where there's the opportunity. I think it's not far from being true that anyone that wants to be in the Hollywood, the entertainment business, I think they're missing a chromosome. Or
podcasters excluded.
Podcasters absolutely excluded. I think anyone that wants to get their face celebrated on the silver screen or whatever, I think you're missing something intrinsic in yourself.
So is there something primitive in the male brain? And we get, close to the idea of the power corrupting, absolutely, but is there something sort of almost built in that?
Of course there is.
Yeah.
I absolutely believe that I think you can't reliably expect anyone, and I include women in this as well, to separate forms of power. If you have been in a situation of limitless authority for decades, where you have been able to act egregiously with impunity for years and years and years. And I think there was it was mentioned yesterday on the news that there was part of his contract was stipulated that if anyone was to accuse him of any kind of impropriety, the company was required to settle out of court up to $250,000, sight unseen, and then he would pay them back at his convenience, and things would just proceed apace, as if nothing ever happened. That's the language that was in his employment contract with his own company. And his brother Bob saying, "Oh, I had no idea. What a bag of shite. There's no way. If Judi Dench knows about it, if there was, I think Sarah Polley was interviewed yesterday, and she was saying, when I was 22, I went down there and had a meeting with in a hotel room with Harvey Weinstein, and my publicist refused to leave me alone with him. So if kind of the publicists, the people who scurry around underneath, behind the scenes know about this stuff, everyone does.
I wish that all of this was really about Trump.
Sorry?
All of these revelations and evidences were... Because, I mean, he's the pussy grabber, so...
Do you honestly think... in your opinion, what the hell will it take? Yeah. I mean, he'll have to, I think, kill someone on camera. And
don't push it. I don't even think that'll work.
What do you think? I mean, he talks about apparently his base of support. They're violently selective on which amendment to the Constitution to be rabid about. They're rabid about the second, but they don't care so much about the first. And I think they probably would like to get rid of the what was it, the 18th Amendment?
Which one is that?
That's civil rights. That's the not all of them, I'm sure, but
and they were talking about pulling the licenses of certain TV.
Yeah. It's how I don't understand. So you don't think, you can't picture? It's akin in my mind to, I remember thinking that when that shooting incident, I always forget the name of it, with the kids.
Sandy Hook.
Sandy Hook, yeah. I thought, for the love of God, this has got to tip the balance. This, I mean, gunmen going in and shooting up churches, and I mean, an argument could be made, it's not my church, or they're black people, I'm not black, or they're Muslims. But kids, I thought, okay, like a dozen or 2 dozen kids, elementary kids were killed. Mm-hmm. This has got to start the argument. But no, like the first thing after Las Vegas, the morning after all of that, the morning DJs reportedly were beaking off about how, this is not a gun control issue, this is a mental health issue.
We got a great speech from Wayne LaPierre at the time after Sandy Hook. So that calmed everything down.
In support of what?
He's a spokesman for the NRA.
No, I know who he is.
Yeah.
I
think he was saying the teachers should have been armed.
Yeah.
So I thought the kids should be armed as well.
Well, isn't that what? And the horror of horrors, to quote Marlon Brando. No, the horror. Yeah. The horror. Isn't that what that Peanut Head? What do they call it? The woman that they put in charge of education, mm-hmm. Betty something, Betsy. She's what is it? One of those multi-level marketing kind of millionaires. Mm-hmm. You go into people's houses and you sell them Tupperware and cleaning products and stuff.
Amway.
Amway, exactly. I believe she's an Amway heiress, and they, on the basis of that, Trump made her the Minister of Education.
Yeah.
And she, I believe in her senatorial hearing, said that the teacher should have been armed. Yeah. So I think.
Well, and then they were playing baseball or whatever, and a couple senators got shot up. Like even when
by a Bernie Sanders supporter, for God's sake. I mean, if Bernie Sanders supporters are arming themselves, it's not too long before, kind of things start to take a sharp shift in tone.
Remember a few years ago there was a retired military guy who had recruited a young sidekick.
The guys shooting from the trunk?
Yeah, they got into a trunk.
Yeah.
I haven't heard much about that. We don't really want to remember them all, I guess.
Well, if you look at the, after, I guess, the day or two, like so many train wreck or car wrecks or anything you're watching in the news, you're initially, oh my God, the Bataclan nightclub, and oh my God, driving through Nice, oh my God, Belgium, oh my God, Sandy Hook, oh my God, the Orlando nightclub, oh my God, Las Vegas. You get distracted, and you need to be informed at the visceral horror, and then you just realize I guess you're hoping that something will happen. Some Jimmy Stewart character will step up and speak on the floor of the Senate until he, until Father Christmas saves him or something. But they were talking about the incidences of from like Virginia Tech through Sandy Hook and through Orlando and everything, and the numbers just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
So 600 is an incredible number.
600, dead, and I think they said there's like 35, 40 people still in critical, in critical state in hospitals. So the number of dead could exceed 100, and 500 wounded, 100 dead. Mm-hmm. That's
won't make it an ounce of difference.
That's a small armed engagement.
Yeah,
that's a military conflict. I mean, you have kind of an exchange of fire between two opposing military forces. That's not an insubstantial body count for an armed conflict.
Yeah.
So, I think what that's going to engender is bigger and bigger numbers. They're going to be putting bigger numbers up there and bigger numbers. I don't know how someone's going to actually improve on 600 to get their name even further ahead in the history books, but I don't see how that isn't the logical result in an environment where, someone can bring in, 24 automatic weapons into like the Mandalay Bay.
Yeah. And you'd be like, oh well, why would they let the hotel staff let that happen? But the way these little gun shows work, that's what you would do. Mm-hmm. You would rent an expensive suite, bring in a bunch of guns, and you would have a little sale or whatever.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I just assumed he brought them in dismantled or in golf cases, golf bags, or something like that.
Beautiful cases. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and he was there for like a week or so. Mm. So, I mean, he could have come and gone and going to play another round of golf. Like, where are your clubs? Oh, I left them at the club. Right. Who knows? Yeah. But the fact that anyone can get, and
so I'll cut what I'm about to say out. But I mean, you were talking about that the number. How would somebody outdo the number of deaths? And I think, and I totally will edit this out, but we all know every concert you were ever at, every football game you were ever at, it would be nothing for somebody to sneak in a couple grenades or sneak in beforehand, or some kind of staff sneak in a cache of weapons. But I mean, right? I mean, there's movies about that, crashing planes, or the Naked Gun, or blowing up the stadium, or crashing the,
Yeah.
So those numbers could easily be outdone.
Yeah, they can, and they will be.
Yeah.
They absolutely will be. There's no doubt in my mind that I would say before the end of next year, before the end of 2018, somebody will have put another even larger number up. Now, I mean,
there's copycat, and in a case like this, if a copycat kicked in, or if some kind of weird competition kicked in, but this is sort of what happens, I guess. This is inevitable. What always happens
in a world that celebrates celebrity.
Right.
It's like, if you can't be a celebrity, your face on the news is exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
It probably triggers the same kind of emotional response. And a lot of people, there's people out there that never met me talking about me. Who cares what they're talking? Who cares what the verbs and articles that are that follow my name? They know my name. They recognize my face.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of.
I haven't kept up on my details because, again, the first few days after it was that he had an escape plan, and the car was loaded, and the other houses had munitions, and was he planning on getting out of there? The other day it was he was shooting at tanks at the airport full of fuel. What his real plan was. The fact that he's sort of well off and was successful in certain ways. Somebody was pointing out that he had a empathetic, seemingly semi-healthy relationship, was capable of some of these emotions that we would assume he was absent of in order to, so there's so many contradictions in him not meeting the profile.
Or able to create the illusion of those relationships. Right. Which is part of sociopathy as well, I would think.
Yeah, the Dexter connection, right?
Yeah.
If you've seen that, where he's trained to emulate those behavior patterns in order to pass as normal. But there's also the other side of it. There was a couple stories of him being observed, in crisis. And so that there was something that was going on with him psychologically, and maybe it was intermittent.
Well, I have no doubt there's no doubt in my mind that the DJs were right. It is a mental health issue. Because, I mean, strictly speaking, anyone that kills 100 people, or over 60 people, and kills and wounds close to 600 people is, I think, there's a pretty good argument for you being clinically insane. At the very least, violently aberrant. But that's beside the point.
Terrorism has shifted away from even putting itself in a position where it's going to negotiate. They're all a fait accompli. After the fact statements of responsibility, there's no negotiation to be made, it would seem. So the style of terrorism changed. And
they seem to be motivated by, I think about the difference and how the actions that are taken by organizations like Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram on Nigeria or the west coast of Africa, places like that, kind of going in and shooting up oil refineries and shopping malls and stealing like entire student bodies and stuff like that. It is just a race for the top in who can do things more and more dramatic.
Right.
And it seems to be, I think it's much easier to desensitize or neuter an event in print media, because you can read about it, and it's like, yeah, sure, it's horrifying, but when you see people on television, weeping and over banners and crawls and talking about the same stuff over and over and over again, it inspires and creates an artificial reaction of hysteria. That's the function of modern day infotainment.
That kid face down in the sand on the beach.
Yeah.
Got a lot of excitement.
I mean, you could play that. That's playing on the same nerves, the same emotional palette as Sarah McLachlan.
Right.
Singing songs about adopting dogs.
Right.
Right. It's. I mean, that's horrifying, but it's like you see this faceless child, you don't know any idea who. It's just a concept, right? And you get this twinge of shame and horror, and I should do something about that without a non-specific, generalized sense of this is a call to arms, and then the image is gone, and the call to arms fades like kind of those the horns in Patton, you ever see that movie Patton, where he, kind of whenever he was thinking about his future and his place in history, there would be like this, kind of bugle call in the background that's, kind of, that's, this is my place in history, kind of, and then it fades and he comes back into the real world. Anyway, I'm rambling.
I hear you. Well, yeah, I'm a big fan of the movie Brazil. And there's periods in that movie where he is just soaring like a winged animal above it all.
Robert De Niro?
He played I think he was a repair person.
Yeah, he was a plumber, I think, or an electrician.
Yeah.
Yeah, Terry Gilliam is a genius.
Oh yeah.
He really is. I think at some point I'm going to have to rewatch Baron von Munchausen, because I think that got a bad rap. Anyone that could come up with Brazil and 12 Monkeys deserves a second chance for me. I think a bunch of chances. Of the amount of effort that I used to put into making a mixtape.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was an afternoon, pack of smokes and I would go through all of my CDs and I would pull out 30 or 40 and I would there would be a whole thing of
Let me ask you this: did you make a playlist or was it live?
It was live. It was live off the floor.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's like, okay, because it's like I would choose like 30 or 40 CDs and I'd say, okay, well, there's a couple songs and I get them moving around in the hopper of my brain, and then it's like, what goes well with that song, and
Absolutely.
Then you put that song and you see, does it work, and then you work the levels, and then you figure out how much space there is involved. You turn up the volume, and so there is. I understand from that perspective. I mean, it's nowhere near as complex as what you're talking about. But
we used to turn the record back 3/4 of a rotation, and when you hit the power, hit the pause at the same time, that cues in at speed.
That's what DJs do. Yeah, you figure out where the signal starts on the vinyl, and then you rewind it just enough time for it to come to speed. Yeah.
The other thing that there was, I think there was a podcast, and they were talking to one of these DJs, and his big thing was knowing the number of seconds before the song starts. So there's the intro, but when does the vocal start? So, and this is the opportunity for DJs to do their talk over.
Oh yeah.
And now the sounds of blah, and just as he finishes, it comes the first vocal out. And the big thing amongst these DJs was knowing how many seconds each song was out of an entire library.
I can remember sitting and listening to it a few times, and the tension, like, is he going to make it? Like, he doesn't sound like he's wrapping up, but I know that there's going to be some big opening chord, or the vocals start soon, and like, wow, look at that, he just got it in under the wire. And I appreciate from the technical standpoint that's nice to actually see.
Well, it's, I mean, the way they work it is they mark it, and it's all,
Yeah,
institutionalized. But the old farts are the ones who have them all memorized.
Well, I wonder. See, and that's what I'm thinking about the size of library, the hundreds and hundreds of gigs of music that a major station like Q107 or CFNY would have, and how do you must buy packages of music with that kind of information, because already preset, right? Like, because you can't go through, you can't remember.
Mind you, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they were only playing 16 songs all day anyway, just over and over.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. Wake up! Time to die! Sorry, I just finished watching Blade Runner last night. Wake up! Time to die!
Did they remake that movie?
They made a follow-up, like Blade Runner.
Have you seen that?
Here's an interesting thing. It was Nancy and I were yucking it up. Blade Runner's set in 2019.
Huh.
So it's like, you remember all the celebrations that people were having when it came, whatever date that Back to the Future took place in.
Right.
I'm wondering, kind of when it gets to be November 2019. Yeah. Well, we're going to have to work awful hard to get off planet in the next 2 years. I'm on board for it, though.
Great.
Okay.
Great talking to you, Kevin.
Take it easy, Dave. Have a good Sunday, and talk to you when I talk to you, okay?
Thanks again.
You're welcome. Bye.
I'm Dave Archer in Midtown.
And I'm Kevin Weber from the Beaches.